Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Fitness Education Series produced by the Australian Fitness Academy. It's like progressive overload for your brain. I'm your host, Tom Rock, and today's episode we've got the crew in. We got Steph.
Hello.
Eddie.
Hey, how's it going?
And we got Aaron.
Hello.
Excellent. Aaron's obviously fired up for this one.
Fired up, ready to go.
He's not had his coffee yet.
All right.
Second
This episode I'm going to call Eddie's Insights.
Eddie's inside.
Eddie's brain
Oh my
is... Yeah, Eddie, it's all about you today, Eddie.
Put him on
So,
the spot here.
yep, straight on the spot. Eddie's brain is always tuning. We're in the office. Eddie's always talking about something, looking at something. He's always in the gym doing stuff.
Sure, he got the registration of the buses through him under then, but
Yep, no, he
Ready
didn't.
to go.
But Eddie's insights. Let's get a bit of an idea of what Eddie's into lately and what's his brain thinking about programming or exercise. What do you got?
Well, first of all, it's really a question for all of you, and because we go to the gym all the time, right?
Yep.
And but at the end of the session, you ask, "Oh, how's your workout?" Right? How's training? We usually ask that, but we never really define it. What is a workout? What is training? And what is exercise? Right.
Yep.
So I'm going to start with three questions. How would you define physical activity? Give me an example of physical activity.
physical activity.
Just
for me-
physical activity, yes.
Physical activity for me is I need to have a bit more structure to it. So I can't just be playing with my son on the floor or going outside with him and going for a walk. That for me isn't physical activity. But I know that others might define physical activity as that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's hear around the room.
I think
Tom?
physical activity is probably more like general activity. Physical activity, if I go for a walk, that's, I guess, incidental activity, but
So getting your steps in.
getting your steps in would be physical activity. How physically active are you? If I have a job where I'm active, that's physical activity, I guess.
So working hospitality, yeah.
Tradies.
Yeah.
But is that going for a stroll outside?
I
Just
guess
a
I'm-
normal walk through the park.
I think that is.
Or I'm getting my steps in and I have to hit 10,000.
Well, I think going for a walk is physical activity. I'm sort of preempting
Yeah.
Eddie's next questions because I want to leave myself somewhere to go. 'Cause as soon as I say,
I dug
as soon as I
myself
say
in
if I go
already.
for a run, that's physical activity.
You don't
But
want to back
technically,
yourself
if
into a
I've
corner.
planned it, it's probably exercise potentially. Steph,
Physical activity is moving your body.
Yes, I think that's good.
That's really cool. Yeah, I would add to that general movements.
General movement.
Just very general. It can be, like Aaron said, playing with your kid on the floor, getting your steps in, usually unstructured in some way.
Yeah, I think I misspoke. I think I said I didn't say physical activity was that, but I meant I consider that.
Actually, now I think about even
Physical
sport,
activity,
probably I would assume is physical activity. Like if I want to go for a surf or I play tennis or I do a triathlon, it's probably physical activity. Maybe not doing a triathlon. It's more of a
It's still moving your
it's moving
body,
your body. It probably is
but it's
physical
more
activity.
specific
But yeah, I
category.
think when we get to exercise, we'll probably lean more towards training for an
Okay.
event.
Well,
What's your next question, Eddie?
we've established that. So I'm physically active. That's great.
Yep.
But that's not enough to get us fit, right? So now I need to do some exercise. Now, how would you define exercise? Give me some examples. What is that?
Going for a run.
Running?
Swim.
Swimming? I'm sure everything you see in the gym, squatting.
Anything
Yep.
with a structure or an intent to do a certain activity. There's an intent behind it.
Perfect. So we're progressing up the level. So we're thinking more of a specific movement now, right?
Yeah, you're going out with a purpose behind what you're doing.
And there's usually some level of exertion to that movement
Yes.
for it to be
I
exercise.
think the idea of exercise is probably to get you fitter, whereas physical activity is just happens, maybe.
Go for a stroll with friends
For
in a
stroll
park.
with a friend, or you're doing some instant, like playing a sport socially, is physical activity. But again, exercise, your goal is to become healthier.
Makes sense, right? Because if I'm just getting my steps in, that's different to going for a jog or going for an
Yeah.
hour walk, which is a bit more specific, a bit more structured.
Yep.
Okay, so let's move up a level. What is training? Give me some examples.
See, that's where I think,
Training for me then. So if I'm taking that off the back of exercise and that's getting me healthier, training then is structured to a point that has the outcome. Whether that is an event, whether that is a goal, whether that is, like doing a triathlon and completing at a certain time, like that. That for me is training.
if you have an end goal, I think in your training for something specific,
Yes.
it could be get stronger, it could be get bigger,
Yes.
it could be get fitter, but have a measurable, attainable goal,
Yes.
and then you plan a training program around it.
Yes.
So a SMART goal.
Could be a SMART goal.
I'll give you a bullet point. It's a specific exercise to improve a physical skill. I'm
Yep.
improving a physical skill.
That's training.
Training. Yes.
Mm.
Okay.
So, is there a level above that though? What's above training? Because there is a book written by Anders Ericsson, and it's called Peak, and he talks about this a lot. And now I don't want to butcher the paraphrasing, but he got people through deliberate practice to memorize a string of numbers. Now, when he first tested them, I think they felt somewhere between 10 and 20. They could memorize 10 to 20 numbers. He got them to 80 plus.
Crazy.
Now, he called that deliberate practice, but what's the difference between training and deliberate practice?
I think it's a spectrum potentially, but I think it's the amount of focus or energy you put into doing it consistently over time. Like I can say I'm training, but if I'm not doing it consistently, or I say I'm going to do upper body today and I just sort of do a half upper body session where I just sort of don't really put in a lot of effort. I'm technically training.
Upper body session I've ever done.
I'm technically training, but it's probably not as deliberate as it could be.
Absolutely. Now, it is quite broad the way he defines it, but an easy way to think of it is you're improving a specific aspect of a skill. So whereas training, I'm improving a skill. Let's say I want to improve my squat.
Yep.
Deliberate practice is I want to improve my knee position in the squat so it doesn't roll inwards and cause knee pain.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a specific part of that skill. So, and that would be deliberate practice. So based on that, now from your own training, from what you see in gyms, how often do we actually do deliberate practice
Do we or do we see people doing
in
it?
general and yourselves?
I think that's a good thing to think about, because I think good personal trainers or good coaches out there should be helping their clients or doing the deliberate practice for their clients or instructing them to do it. So if you're not analysing your clients' movements, their program, their goals, and then making a specific program to help them reach it, that's something you should probably be doing.
Absolutely.
You've done that in your training though, Tom, where we've taken videos for hip position, your squat,
Yes.
your knee position. That was deliberate practice where Tom's knee pain, his mobility increased, or if I had more of a focus on his mobility, which then the deliberate practice was leading to his hip position at the bottom of his squat to be able to maximize the amount of weight he was lifting. That was the more deliberate practice.
Yeah.
And the actual number, it was where do the knees sit? Is there no pain? Where do the hips sit?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you have seen it before, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So now let's go back to that example at the gym. So I've just left the gym. How's your workout? How's training? Or it depends. What was I doing? And
Yeah.
because we often make these assumptions. Maybe I thought I was training, but what I was actually doing was just exercising and looking at my phone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I definitely think that's a good thing. I remember sometimes we were training at lunchtime over at work, and we used to have a Charlie in the careers team, and he'd come out and be like, "Oh, what are you doing?" "Oh, I'm just training." He's like, "What are you training for?" It's like, "Oh, just training." And he was just throwing. It's like, and I would say I'm training for life, but
And
But-
this is
but that's the thing. I think if you,
yeah.
it's fine to do exercise, and I think you don't have to go doing deliberate practice every time. Potentially, like you'll go through phases, and you're just like, I can go in, I can do what I want, I'm maintaining, I'm slowly increasing. That's good. But then you might get times when like my knee pain or my whatever it is comes up. You're like, I need to hone in on something and maybe do a good block of more deliberate training.
And so I'll use my example with swimming. When I started to get back into that, I asked for advice from Steph about my neck pain. So she said, okay, where are your eyes? So I didn't even focus on time. I didn't focus on distance for 3 weeks. My deliberate practice was head position in the pool, my shoulder position, and my stroke to reduce the pain in my neck. I didn't focus on how far I was going.
Well, there you go. And that's different than just thrashing in the swimming pool.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, there's an interesting thing with deliberate practice, right? Have you all heard of the experiment they did with London taxi drivers, where they basically scanned their brain before they started the job and after they had been working the job? Do you know what they found?
No.
It's not going to be good.
So, okay, first of all, neuroplasticity, when it first came out, it was very contentious, right? Because we thought the brain was like a static, fixed
Yeah.
object, right? So the idea that the brain could change itself was unheard of. But it's generally accepted today, and we do see it in brain scans. So after they'd been working the job as a London taxi driver, the hippocampus, the part responsible for memory, expanded.
Because they're learning routes of.
Yes, because if anyone's ever been to London, you have to really know the streets quite intimately. So, and that was them just working the job. So through their deliberate practice of getting good as a London taxi driver, your brain changed. So does the same thing happen during training and deliberate practice?
I reckon.
I think so. Well, that's where our physical improvements and abilities come.
Well, Tom, you like AFL, right?
Yep.
So if I watch AFL, I see a bunch of guys in short shorts running around.
Well, you're not wrong.
But what do you see? I'm sure you see a lot more intricacies, right? You see the strategy. You
Yes.
see all the little details.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's the power of deliberate practice. You walk into the gym, you see everything differently. Your brain actually can change too.
Yep.
So it's something to think about, folks. If you can add that to your regimen. So are we training? Or am I just exercising? Or what can I be deliberate with today?
I think it looks at long-term programming too. I don't know, Steph, about your triathlon training, but you'd go, especially with a seasonal event and something where you've got a event at the end or it's in seasons, you might, let's say you come back from a off-season, your first 6 to 8 weeks could be more exercise or less deliberate, do you think?
So
then
that's actually where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
So I've had the off season, that was a month.
Yep.
And good month. And now we're looking at my weaknesses.
Yep.
So calf strength. So a lot of my specificity in my program is different types of calf strength. There's actual loading with machines, but also plyometric work and rebound off the ground, really short contact time in the gym doing pogo jumps with resistant bands. So there's specificity or the intent of the exercises. And there's other new exercises I'm being taught to do, like it's a leg hip hitch, but you bring your leg up onto the step. And the leg you're loading has to hold its alignment up to be able to lift the other leg through. So when you're running and pushing off that leg, it can hold it. Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So there's a lot of intent in my training at the moment to build base.
And is that going to change as well when you get your new bike?
Everything's gonna have to change when I get a new bike.
Instead of riding inside,
I have to go right outside.
Outside.
But I think it's a
On
cool
the velodrome.
concept because that book Eddie mentioned, Peak, which is one after Eddie's recommendation a couple of years ago, I read it. Very interesting. But I think the concept behind it's completely around like memory and how you can just train it to
Happen
like, you
automatically.
wouldn't be able to believe what they can do. But you can apply that strategy of deliberate practice to all areas of life, especially training. So if you want a specific outcome, that's why personal training is good, because if you have a goal, they'll help you plan a deliberate program that you can follow and rely on to get to your goal.
It's great you mentioned that, Tom, because now that we have this in mind, how effective can a workout plan be without the training elements, without the deliberate practice? Because you can see the issues now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where it's like, if I'm just going to the gym and I'll just do my daily exercise, you might not get the same results as if I went in with a deliberate mindset of practicing and just that's my focus for the day.
And how often do we see, even ourselves sometimes, we get through programs like a grocery list.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Tick the box.
Tick the box,
Roll into the box.
go through the motions, get it done.
Yep.
How deliberate is that? And am I improving or am I just exercising? Am I just getting physical activity?
Yeah.
Yep. I think it's a great point, and it's something you could consider with clients too. If they come in and they've seen good results and then you've done a month or two with them and it's like, oh, I'm not really progressing. It's like, okay, how can we analyze the last month? How is your training session? Like you might train with them once a week and they're training outside of you 2 times a week.
Yep.
Can you say, what are your sessions like? And if they're going in and your session is really good, but then they come in their sessions and they're like sort of half-assed, like he said, they're on their phone maybe, not really deliberately.
I'm training
pushing.
my phone skills probably.
Got that scrolling thumb going well.
I'm deliberate with my thumb movement.
Yeah, but if you're not going in with that focus and deliberate goal, I think, absolutely can affect training.
Well, I'd love to leave you all with this.
Yep.
So in another book by David Hawkins, it's called Power versus Force. Very popular, not just people in fitness, but also people in business and other fields. And he did this thing called muscle testing, where I exert a little bit of pressure against your muscle and you need to resist back. From there, I'm going to measure how much you resist back to see if the muscles are firing. But he also tracked this with emotions. So based on that, what emotion do you think gave the best results in terms of getting, let's say, force from that muscle?
Anger.
I was going to say anger.
Now, anger is actually fairly down the list. So,
Oh, wow.
as a frame of reference, the top of his scale was 700. Anger was 150.
Not good.
Whoa.
Give me another emotion.
Happiness.
Happiness. Okay, I'm going to link that to joy. That was 540
More
out
than
of
anger.
700. Give me a low energy state. What's at the very bottom, you think?
Rest, relaxed.
Sleeping.
That's not an emotion.
No.
I'll,
Fatigue.
Calm.
I'll give it to you.
Calm.
And I say it with
Sadness.
I say it with sadness. Actually, it's not sadness, but I will say it with sadness. But it's actually shame. Shame measured
Wow.
at 20.
Oh, the lowest. It's the lowest.
Oh, shame's the lowest.
Shame. I thought you were going to
At
say shame was the
very
highest.
lowest. Shame.
Yep.
So embarrassment, public humiliation.
Hmm.
It really drops it right down.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it does. You don't really.
Fear 100.
Fear is low.
Yes,
Wow.
fear is low.
Hmm.
Apathy. So spirit of apathy.
Yep.
I don't care. 50.
All inhibitors.
Hmm.
Well, you're just not really upregulated or
Yeah.
So-
potentiated, are you?
Now the top of his scale is a bit. I think it relates to another book. It's Enlightenments. Now that's a bit out there, but if you know about positive psychology, the Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi talks a lot about flow states, and I think enlightenment has more to do with flow states because he talks about how being in the flow.
Yep.
For example, Tom, when you're surfing, and all you're thinking about is surfing,
Yep.
there's nothing else in your mind.
Yep.
You're in that flow state.
Yep.
And you're probably performing very well.
Yep.
In that moment.
Yep.
If you're thinking about bills and taxes, probably not.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, when they asked Michael Jordan, what do you think your secret was to your success? He just said love for the game,
Passion.
and
Yeah.
I think that's what he was talking about.
Yeah, well, they talk a lot about, like, with sports, it's always like the flow state and being in the zone, and people just have these performances where they just they just don't need to think. So sometimes overthinking and underthinking aren't detrimental. It's sort of that sweet spot in the middle, I think, which is what they talk about.
And if anyone's ever competed, you feel like when you're there, you're excited. You got your
Yep.
friends and family cheering you on. For some reason, you perform better.
Yeah.
You're breaking PRs.
Yep.
I'm not sure if it is in there, or if it's an actual emotion. Is anxiety in there at all in the scale?
There is no anxiety on this scale.
What was the
but-
top emotion? And we get
A lot.
Enlightenment.
alignment was the top.
Yeah, so the bottom was shame. The next one after that was guilt at 30, then apathy, grief, fear, desire, then anger.
Yeah, right.
What are the top three? Like
Top three, enlightenment, peace, and
Peace.
joy.
and joy. Okay.
It's like
So-
Jesus at Christmas.
I say this a lot to people, and a lot of people don't believe me, but love for what you do is a massive tactical advantage.
That's cool.
It's a massive advantage.
Yeah. Don't mind it.
Cool. I
Something
like
to think about with your training. Go into this next session with love, Steph.
With
I'm
love.
going to do these isometric calf holds with love.
Love for my calves.
Yep.
You can do it,
Maybe
calves.
not. I don't think I want to see that.
I'm doing my workout in a couple of hours, Eddie. You can come watch.
But yeah, I hope that helps.
Very cool,
I
very
hope
cool.
That gives you some insight and some things to think about for your next training.
That's it.
Cool.
I hope you all enjoyed that episode of Eddie's Insights. I'm sure it won't be the last time we get Eddie's Insights onto the podcast. Good little discussions. If anyone has any thoughts on this episode, send an email to tom@afa.com.au, or if you've got any other topics or questions for me or even Eddie or anyone on the team, send me an email. We're happy to discuss any topic or questions you guys have. Other than that, have a great weekend and we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks for jumping on, everyone.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.